Today's talk is about journaling the birds you see in the field with confidence while having fun doing it. Our speaker, Alex Cho, has been journaling during his birding trip since he was 8 years old. So he's got a lot of experience at this. Today, he's an active birder, photographer, conservationist, artist, and of course, an avid field journaler. He's also a member of numerous organizations, including SFPBO, that focus on conservation, science, and outreach related to birds. He recently won silver in three different categories at the 2022 ABA Young Birders Mentoring Program. Categories were field notebook, photography, and conservation community leadership. He's currently studying the morphological differences by region of the northern cardinal. Please welcome Alex Cho.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending on this very hot Thursday evening. I believe we are on the back end of the heat wave, which is good news. Tonight, I'll be talking about field journaling, one of my favorite things to do, and I hope that if you journal already, maybe there's something new to learn. And if you don't field journal, I hope this inspires you to try. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is field journaling? We will explore tonight what it is, why to journal, and how to start. So field journaling is making observations and then putting them on paper. It's pretty simple. So how did field journaling start? I looked everywhere to find some of this information, but I couldn't really find a definitive answer. But in my mind, I think about cave paintings, Egyptian reliefs, and of course, the field journals of the great explorers and ornithologists such as Lewis and Clark, Charles Darwin, and Joseph Grinnell. Seems like making observations and recording them has been around for a long time. This is a depiction of an owl on sandstone from Colorado. This is an Egyptian relief of an owl, and these are from the field journals of Lewis and Clark, depicting a greater white-fronted goose and a greater sage grouse. Both of these were done by William Clark, and I just love these. So why should I have a field journal? Field journaling may seem outdated today, so why should I have a field journal? Well, field journaling deepens our understanding of the natural world as we pay close attention to record our observations. It allows us to observe subjects and their behavior without intruding on them. And through journaling, we feel more of a connection to nature. As we study its intricacies, which make us more considerate of our place in this world. And honestly, when we're out in the field, we just can't remember everything that we see. And journaling is a fantastic way to record and document our observations and experiences. What are the benefits of journaling? Journaling helps to identify birds better as we describe, write, and sketch them. For example, in Arizona, I saw this short-tailed hawk, and I put it into my field journal, seen here. This is my own sketch of it, along with a couple of my notes. Later on, I was looking at a birding website, and it had a photo quiz on it. And that photo quiz included a hawk, which I recognized as a short tail from me drawing it, even though the one I had seen here is a light morph, and the one in the photo quiz was a dark morph. And this has helped me with many other birds that I've drawn in my journals. Also, with so much going on and our phones constantly beeping and distracting us, sitting and concentrating on just one thing really helps me learn how to focus. And as we observe birds, their behavior, and their habitats, we begin to ask many questions of what we see, which leads to further research and learning. And observing such beautiful subjects and their habitats make us appreciate the world around us more. The act of just sitting on a bench or blankets and sketching and writing is very relaxing. And one of the best parts is that you'll be able to relive that experience days, months, or even years later, and be able to share it with others too, due to having a physical copy of your experience. So now let's move on to how to start journaling. And this drawing is of a very intriguing Lewis's woodpecker that I was observing in Death Valley. And I stayed in the shaded side of the palm tree that he was on for a long time, as it was about 105 degrees outside when I was there. And these woodpeckers have beautiful colors. So when starting out, you don't need to spend a lot of money on the fancy stuff. Any journal or notebook will work. Me personally, I like sketch pads with the large rings, as it's easy to turn the pages and not lose any room in the binding, but really anything will work. Also, for kids or for anyone starting out, journals like this one here actually have some prompts that will make starting easy. You can see it has like dates, day of work of the week, the weather, some other prompts, areas for sketches, and also pencils. Any pencil will do, but mechanical are I found are good for in the field because you don't have to worry about sharpening them constantly. If you fill them up with enough graphite beforehand, they'll last you a long time. I know a lot of people who use watercolors as well to draw, and the results are so pretty. But at least for me personally, colored pencils seem a little bit easier if you want to color in the field. Although I have seen this really cool watercolor brush that actually holds water in it, and it seems to be easy enough to work with because you can add a bit of water to the end of your brush and then use that for the paint itself. And also, most places you go will have benches for you to sit, but a small trail chair might be helpful for places when you are deep in habitat and there's
Mhm.
nowhere really made to sit on. So another thing, I often get stuck journaling because I'm so concerned that I wasn't putting enough important information in my journal. And so we often ask, should my journal be scientific or just for fun? And the answer is either one is perfectly acceptable. It really depends on what your goals are. You may even switch back and forth between the two. And as for me personally, I do a combination of the two. I drew this red nape sapsucker because it was just so fantastic. He was kind of ruffled up in the sunlight, his feathers were sticking out, and when I drew him, I wasn't really concerned about his crest or his bill shape or any really intricate, accurate details. I just wanted to draw this amazing bird. But on the other hand, here with this olive warbler, it was really intriguing to me because it's an olive warbler, but it's also not a warbler. It's alone in its own family. So I wanted to pay attention to this bird a little bit more when I drew him in my journal. And you can see I added a lot more information, and your journaling will change as your goals change, and they'll change from bird to bird as well. What you do on one you may not do on another. But if you decide you want to document something in a more scientific way, there's one important thing to remember, and that is that it's important to observe and record as accurately as possible. You do want to be accurate with a lot of documentation. And what could you document scientifically? You could document the observations of the same area over years or decades if you keep returning to that place. You could record observations of a particular species, and then even going further into that, observations of particular behavior. And you can also document interactions between birds and other species or interactions between the birds themselves and their habitat. And so shown here, this is a page from the Journal of American Ornithologist Martin H. Moynihan, as he was observing these honey creepers in Panama in 1958. On this page, he's giving a really detailed account of their calls and behaviors. You can see he's included these sketches and even labeled them so that he can write more about them while referencing them specifically. And I really like this entry. It's really detailed and it's really cool to look at. And then there's also, going further into scientific journaling, the Grinnell method of field journaling. And this was done by Joseph Grinnell, famous zoologist and ornithologist, and he developed a method of journaling when making observations. As I mentioned, it's known as the Grinnell method of field journaling, and it has 4 parts to it. And these 4 parts are recording notes in the field in a notebook, transcribing and expanding on the field notes into an actual journal, including in-depth descriptions of species observed, and including a catalog of specimen collections. That last point is not one that most of us have to worry about, but many of us volunteer and do surveys, banding, and other research, and so therefore it might be relevant. This is a method that's still used today. And in this quote by Grinnell, he stresses how important it is to record as much as you can, even though you might not think it's important. He says, our field records will be perhaps the most valuable of all our results. Any and all, as many as you have time to record, items are liable to be just what will provide the information wanted. You can't tell in advance which observations will prove valuable. Do you record them all? And here's the kind of journaling that I like, just for fun. And you don't have to journal every time you go out birding, or you don't have to journal every bird that you see. It's really all up to you when and what to journal. I personally probably journal about 1 out of every 4 birding trips I go on, and I still have a pretty good collection of a lot of observations. And you can journal a trip, event, or location, and you make your journal your own without the pressure of any rules. On this particular page, this was a pelagic trip that I went on, and the birds were so incredible. It was my first pelagic, and I was just really excited about seeing everything. Although I did want to label and point out all their markings, I wanted to give my sketches and later more detailed drawings more space on this page and just let their uniqueness and beauty show through. So I did put down some info, as you can see around here, but not like some other pages I've done. And this is where a lot of the time your journal will be a combination of scientific and just for fun. Like this bowler shearwater I drew was just amazing. And it was so interesting to see these sea lions out in the water because they looked like they were waving hello to the boat as it went by. So I wanted to document that while in my journal. And field journaling is limitless. Like here's some examples of different journals, and everyone has their own style. Up here on the top left, this is my journal. And interesting enough, there was an eastern kingbird in Death Valley while I was at the same time that I was there. And so I just had to document that. Alongside that, there were also a lot of monarch butterflies fluttering around the area, so I added that to my journal as well. This journal to the top right is from my friend, Desi Siebert, and he was actually the ABA's Young Birder of the Year from 2015. He's an incredible birder, and I'm sure quite a few of you know him or have heard of him. And as you can see, he mainly focuses on one subject in this entry, which is the white-faced ibis. And that's perfectly fine and is actually a really nice page with a lot of detailed information. And on the bottom here is from John Muir Laws. This is from his journal. And he's just chosen to focus on the wing of a green-winged teal, along with some information about it, date, map, and an actual teal over here. And this is a fantastic entry, and it's so colorful. So anything works when field journaling. And whether just for fun or more scientific, your field journal can be a combination of writing, as I wrote up here. I always love the song of Brown Creeper, which I'm sure you all know that many of you know the mnemonic, trees, trees, beautiful trees. So I included that in the writing up here. And another thing you can include in your journal is sketching. And this is a sketch of a Bullock's Oriole I've seen. You can also include your observations, and one type of observation is listing the birds you saw. And as you can see over here, I personally like to use banding codes because it saves on space. The 4-letter codes are much smaller than just writing out each name individually. You'd probably need like a whole page for that if you're going to do that. Also put down some questions that you might have about something you saw while you're out in the field. Like here, this was another field journal where I wrote, why do they appear to be creeping up the trees when referencing a brown creeper? Because I was wondering, like, they're moving up the trees. I was wondering why they do that. And so with questions, you can ask if a bird did something strange, why are some trees particularly attractive to birds? Put down any questions you have. And what you put in your journal is definitely up to you, but there is some basic information that you might want to always include. And these include things like the date, the time, location where you're at, the weather while you were there, and the observers who you were with when you were journaling. So how do I get this information? Sometimes out in the field, it's difficult to enter all this information if you're not on a journaling specific trip, but there is a lot of technology right at your fingertips that can help. Since us birders are often at weird and obscure places, we can always check eBird for nearby hotspots, and that can help pinpoint our location. Also, if you're in a location where you're still getting a signal, it is possible to just drop a pin on Google Maps and check later the coordinates, or check if there's a nearby park, the name of a road, cliffs, other stuff like that. And regarding weather, I have the Weather Channel app on my phone. And again, if I don't have the time to enter everything in my journal, I'll just open up the app and take a screenshot of my weather app, and I have all the information I'll need to add into my journal later on. It'll give me stuff besides the temperature, location, wind temperature, conditions, humidity, and other stuff. So these are really helpful apps to have, and they can really help you get this information for your journal. So why should we journal when we have eBird? And this is a question that I get asked a lot. And I could probably talk for days about this, but here are just a few reasons. So inputting numbers and quick notes is very different from writing and drawing observations. Writing down a description and drawing something is a lot different than just going into eBird and entering 45 common MERS, as you can see I did here. You'll need to observe and recall so much more information versus typing a few things down. Also, I've seen some eBird entries that are just mini novels. So you could also do that, or you could put your own notes into your field journal. We also tend to look and think about birds and their behaviors in different ways when we're field journaling versus when we're eBirding, as when we know that we need to expand on, say, a bird's flight pattern, we will need to learn to observe so much more. And here, I think my biggest argument is that it just gives us a more complete picture. As you can see, this eBird list and the journal page are from the same trip, that pelagic that I mentioned earlier. And just by looking at the journal page, you get so much more of a complete picture about what we were seeing that day. It also includes my own personal feelings, like down here you can see I wrote, I don't feel seasick, but I don't yet have my sea legs. I wasn't seasick on that trip, thank goodness, but throughout the entire trip, I couldn't stand up straight. And here you can put that rather than on eBird, where in the comments section, I personally tend to leave that for more the location, the weather, and just any notes about the area rather than anything like this. So you can see that you have the numbers on eBird, and I wrote the numbers right up here, just in banding codes. Didn't include the numbers of the birds that we saw, but I included the species. And even though you can add in photos and other comments about the birds, it just feels so much more to draw them and have them all aligned on a page like this. Okay, drawing. I feel like this is probably the biggest reason why people don't want to try out journaling. And I've seen some journals that look like pieces of art, and I think, wow, my journals fall way short of that. But once I got out of my own way, I learned that it's not like that at all. And so I hope for those of you who don't really consider yourselves artists here, that you will give yourselves a chance and know that even a cute minimal stick figure like this is perfectly fine. So to reiterate, drawing is a big challenge of field journaling, but it does not have to be complicated. And it's not for artists only, because drawing is a skill and anyone can draw. And you can draw however you want, especially because this is your journal. And truthfully, although we want results like these, that is way too much pressure to put on ourselves. I did want to include these because these are some of my favorite bird paintings, and they can serve as an inspiration rather than a deterrent. The first one is by Swedish artist Bruno Lilefors and of Swifts, and I love the amount of habitat he put in the background. The owl and the wing are paintings by one of my favorite artists, Austrian Albrecht Dürer, and the detail and color on the wing is amazing. And of course, we know John James Audubon's plates, and this belted kingfisher scene captures their funny behaviors, with this one diving, this one raising its crest, and this one trying to swallow a big fish. And realistically, any type of drawing works. Whether it be pencil versus charcoal sketches, if you want to have color or just leave it in black and white, You could have single or multiple subjects. You can include habitat or no habitat, single birds or full scenes, specific body parts or whole birds, small drawings versus large drawings, and you can have as many drawings as you want, whether it be a few or several. It's all up to how your drawings will look and what you will do with them. There are no boundaries, just your imagination. And this is a Western kingbird that I included in one of my field journal pages. But you can see I never colored it in or even drew a stick beneath him. I didn't even erase some of my starting out points. So this is all I included, and that's perfectly fine because it still gets the message across that I saw a Western kingbird. And if you do feel you wish your bird drawings were better, one way to improve is to start simple. Uh, Draw individual body parts. For me personally, I had a really hard time with feet and bills. So I went on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology website and I looked at some bird skeleton graphics, and that really helped a lot to learn where the ankle was, the knee, the joints for bills, where mandibles join, and all that kind of stuff. So when you learn basic bird anatomy, it'll really help your drawing. And then there's other things, tips like try the circle technique and make ovals and circles for the heads and the bodies. Use your online photos or your own photos to practice with and go at your own pace without the stress of a moving target. You could also practice sitting outside and just drawing what comes to your yard or your feeder. Also try different mediums. There's not one medium that works for everyone, and everyone has their own choice. I know personally the circle technique doesn't work for everyone. I know my mom hates this technique, so just to reiterate, do what you like. And don't be afraid to experiment. Only by experimenting will you find what really works for you. Like these are my own drawings of different feet and different beaks that I still do off every so often to keep practicing. Like this is from when I was trying to get better. I wasn't really great at drawing feet and legs here. So this is supposed to be the leg of a great blue heron. And I really just tried to get the basic shape of it. And especially once I captured this joint and the way the foot bends right here, that really helped. I also just tried with various feet to get better. Like this is an eagle's foot, and I realized that the scales make a lot of difference in pointing out that this is an eagle foot. And then just to try something really unconventional, this is a Hakana foot that from one that I saw in southeastern Arizona. And this took a little bit of time to get the long toes right while still keeping in proportion. Then these are some of the beaks I did as well. This is a house finch, and it took a little bit of a while to figure out the shape of the lower mandible. This is a red-tailed hawk beak, and this is a great egret beak as well. And these really helped take my drawing a little bit further because I really learned how to draw these beaks specifically. And once you're ready to draw in the field, one thing you might want to try is starting off with gesture drawings. And these are quick, rough sketches of a moving subject. They have very little detail, if any detail at all. And with these, you're gonna probably have to do many of the same bird to capture movement. The bird that you're drawing will probably be moving around quite a bit, as birds do. And so you may have to abandon a sketch and quickly start a new one with the new position that the bird's moved in. As you can see in this video right here, gesture drawings are light and quick and can be really helpful out in the field. I filmed myself here gesture drawing a red-tailed hawk. And so the first drawing I did probably took about 45 seconds to complete. So that's really helpful with a moving bird. And then the second drawing, I just did almost an exact copy of it just to show that you can take your gesture drawings and then add more detail later. And with this, adding more detail later, it took about 2 minutes to do the whole thing. And here's an image of the final product. You can see that I still just added minimal detail to the drawing, but I just added enough to show that it was a red-tailed hawk. And this is really just to show how you can use gesture drawings to start as a good base. And speaking of detail, how much detail you add is up to you. And this can be either a lot of detail or little detail, which can work great in the field. Detail can be added later as well. And detail's not even mandatory. You don't have to draw every single one of the tertials in your sketch. And as you can see in these drawings I did, they're very basic. Here with this great egret, I almost just made it essentially a stick figure, but it still conveys what I was trying to get across in that it was hunting. And you can see it was kind of hunched down, moving slowly, and that's really just gets the point across. I didn't even add an eye to this. And above, we all know snowy plovers love hunkering down in their little divots in the sand. And again, I didn't add a lot of detail to this, but I did add an eye, a little bit of detail to show where the color is, but still very basic. And I used circle technique, some of my circle technique remnants are still there. And here, the turkey vulture is drawing its wings, which we can clearly see. And that still shows it, a couple rocks underneath, small head, and a darker body, and still shows it perfectly fine. So basic, almost stick figure birds are perfectly acceptable and they work. But if you want to add a lot of detail, add away. And like this one, I really want to capture as much as possible of this greater peewee that I saw in southeastern Arizona because it was just beautiful. So at home, I really took my time and added as much detail as I could. Awesome little birds. Another question is whether to add color to your drawings. And once more, that is completely up to you. Color's not mandatory, and there are different mediums to choose from. Leaving it in black and white and charcoal is perfectly acceptable. But one thing to remember with color is that birds have incredible colors that aren't readily available out of a color box. Like this red-faced warbler. Its face is not just standard Crayola red. It's a mixture of oranges, reds, pinks, even salmon colors. And I had to really mix and layer and erase and try again and mix and layer again to get this how I wanted. And also, that's why I think blenders will be your best friend because they really help to kind of mix the colors together with whatever medium you're using. And even with this red-faced warbler, I still don't think I necessarily captured the essence of its color, but I definitely gave me a new appreciation for the beauty of nature. And another thing is have a test page. When you're adding color, test pages are incredibly important because they allow you to just test out all your colors and make sure that the color you're about to use is the one that you want, rather than putting it on and realizing it's not the color you want. Now, mediums. Mediums to use are strictly of personal preference. There's not one better than the other. They're just different mediums. I don't use specifically field journals. I usually use drawing pads, actually. They come in various sizes from pretty large to quite small. And with that, there are different papers available for different mediums, although this is not mandatory. There are various mediums to choose from, like colored pencils, charcoals, watercolors, and even markers that you can use. And colored pencils are easy in the field, but I know a lot of people prefer watercolors. I personally have embarrassingly not mastered watercolors, but they definitely give a beautiful end product. And there are also other supplies that can help, such as erasers of various types. There are also blenders, which are medium specific. You can see here in this image, this is the colored pencil blender that I use, but there's also a marker blender that is really nice and it really helps. And then brushes, which are situational, but they can, especially with colored pencils after you erase, they can really help to get pencil shavings or eraser shavings off of the page. And supplies don't have to be expensive, so don't go broke feeling like you have to buy the best stuff. If you choose to do color, blenders are a must, and an electric eraser like the one here can help prevent hand cramping from so much erasing. Also, a white highlighter pen is really good for certain parts. So here are some basic drawing tips. Highlight the eye. This is a drawing of a black-throated sparrow from Arizona that I drew. And I made sure when drawing it to leave a small white circle in the eye for when coloring it for eye shine. And without it, you can see over here that I digitally removed the eye shine, which makes the bird look more like a collected specimen rather than a live bird, just lifeless. Another thing you want to do is draw what you see and not draw from memory. Keep looking at your subject to capture it, and don't draw from how you remember a bird you saw a week ago. Size can also affect accuracy, though this is a personal choice, because I find that the larger I draw, the harder it is to keep proportions, but it definitely go big if it suits you. And every so often, constantly check proportions. Check the tail or head proportion compared to the body, the lengths of the legs and toes. Try the circle technique to begin freehanding. That may work for you or it may not. Again, personal choice. Add shadows, highlights, and reflection when necessary. They'll give a sense of depth. And draw lightly so that if you need to erase, you can erase completely. And also, it helps avoid smudging when coloring. And as I mentioned in the last slide, for me, I prefer to draw small instead of big. And I feel that if you're just starting out, smaller might be a little easier to keep proportions in check. Also, out in the field, smaller to medium drawings are quicker if you're moving from place to place or subject to subject. In this video, you can see the time difference, and here I was drawing a redneck phalarope. And here's me filming myself when I'm drawing the redneck phalarope bigger than I usually do. And I found that when doing so, the proportions weren't exactly how I would have liked them. I felt like I made the body a little too long and the bill a little weird. And then here's me drawing the smaller redneck phalarope. And it took less time, and I feel that the end result was a little bit more accurate. Here's a comparison of the two end products, and the larger phalarope took me about 15 minutes to draw, while the smaller phalarope took me about 9 minutes to draw, and the smaller redneck phalarope looked a little bit better, in my opinion. So once in the field, your subjects will most likely be active, and practicing at your feeders or your backyard will be really helpful to once you are in the field. It'll help you get used to moving subjects. And use the techniques you've practiced when you're out there, drawing smaller versus drawing large or vice versa, color, all that stuff. And also use your senses. Using your senses really helps to expand your descriptions and your observations. For example, for me personally, cedar waxwings look almost velvety to me, and so that's a great note to put in your journal. Warblers love eucalyptus, so note that it smells like eucalyptus where you are. And also find a place and just wait. Surprisingly, wildlife, including birds, if you just sit and wait for a little bit of time, they'll grow accustomed to you quite quickly, and if you're patient and you're still enough, they'll just come right in front of you, just going about their business as if you weren't there. And that can really help for capturing your subjects. So here's some other additions to your journal. And don't hesitate to add whatever you want. Again, this is your journal. There's not a right way to do it. So you can add plants, insects, like I added here with the palm tree and the monarch. You can add other animals, weather, personal feelings, or interesting events. Here are some of the other things that I've included besides birds in my field journal. On my first pelagic, this is the boat that we went out on. And I thought it was just so cool, the bright blue Hoolie cat. And I also included the state palm as it seemed to be very popular and a very important place for birds in Furnace Creek in Death Valley while we were there. And it made me wonder if all these birds were there specifically for these palms. Interestingly, there was not only an eastern kingbird, an eastern wood pewee, but also a brown thrasher here at the same time in Death Valley. Also, this scene here is from Rose Lake in Mount Lemmon in Arizona, and it was such a beautiful area where the group and I went looking for a common blackhawk. And I wanted to remember this habitat that he was in. And again, in Furnace Creek in Death Valley, there were so many of these monarch butterflies. I was really happy to see them as their numbers have been decreasing. And just little things like these to add make great additions to your journals. So here's some helpful tools as well that can help you when you're journaling. And if you're not going on a journal specific trip, these tools can help you to add to your journal later. And these include your photographs, audio recordings of bird calls, a voice recorder app, and notes app for your phone, as well as eBird. And these are the apps that I have on my phone. I have just the standard Notes app as well as the Voice Recorder Pro app. And I use the notes to write down quick observations or numbers I want to remember in case I'm in a hurry or I don't have my journal with me. Same with the Voice Recorder app. I can record my notes if I don't want to write them down or I can't type or I'm on the move, and I can transcribe them later. And also this app can be really good for recording bird songs or calls, which are great additions to add to your journal. And I also use my photographs, like the snowy plover I took here, to help me add details later if I just did quick sketches out in the field. And any notes or information you have entered on eBird, if you use the eBird mobile app, is really helpful too. So now let's put it all together. Let's take our observations, written entries, information, drawings, and other additions and make a page. So this is a page from my own personal field guide, one of my favorite pages. And so let's break down everything that's on here. And as you can see, I've included a little bit of everything we've talked about. And that includes the dates when we were there, the location, where it is, the time, weather, any observers that were there, any notes, including some first impressions and some of the reasons that we were there. Specifically, like I mentioned, for here is the common blackhawk. Also, here I've included a drawing of one of the birds we saw, in this case, a yellow-eyed junco, and I put the name right here. A written description of the bird, as well as over here, a list of the species that we observed while we were there. I've also included some notes about bird behavior, and I did the same with this Grace's warbler up here. Kind of tried to show the habitat it was in, as well as some notes, some behavior, and a written description. I've also included some notes about the area, like that it's a densely wooded area, and some other observations as well, like this pine right here. It was incredible. One of the most amazing things I'd seen that day because it was really early in the morning when we were there, and this pine was steaming. There was literal steam coming off of the trunk of the pine, and I noted that right here. And this includes some questions as well, like what type of pine is this? One of the members in the group told me it might be a ponderosa pine, so I wrote that down right here. I also included this cute little Abert squirrel, and I just really wanted to include it because it looks so different from the squirrels that we have here with its rufous back and large ears. And here, this is a little bit of a different trip. So, a note on pelagics. It's really hard to journal on a pelagic trip, and recording notes at home is a better opinion. While you're on the boat, it's hard to journal because of the rocking of the boat as well as the spraying of water. You don't want to get your journal wet. There's no real hotspots as well, so it's good to use latitude and longitude. And if you have signal where you're at, drop pins where it's possible. And as I mentioned, everything will probably get wet from the water spray from the boat, so you don't want your journal to have a bunch of water spots as well. This is a page I did at home from all the information that I gathered on the pelagic using voice notes, photographs, and my own eBird lists. And as you can see here, there are only coordinates from where we were quite a bit out. And I wrote down here that we were in the open ocean. And when I'm journaling a trip, I also like to include some final thoughts, like I did here. So some final thoughts for this presentation. Once again, field journaling can be anything that you want it to be, and explore different mediums and styles to see what fits you. This is your journal. Simple figures are enough to convey what you've seen, and not all journaling has to be done in the field necessarily. And especially remember that this is your journal and there are no rules. The only real rule is to enjoy yourself and have fun. And now I'd like to say a big thank you to Serena and SFBBO for the opportunity to present, Susan and Frank Gilliland for their continued support, Los Angeles Birders for helping me grow as a birder, and to everyone who attended tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. That was a really wonderful presentation. And I know that I can't be the only person who is inspired to start field journaling and sketching. I thought you provided really great tips, made it very approachable. And I also have to commend you on your artwork. It's really beautiful. And I know that that takes a lot of practice. I really appreciate you showing how you've approached some of the difficult areas for you. I think that's so helpful. So thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Of course. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and enter that in the chat, and I am happy to go ahead and read those out in roughly the order that they came in. First of all, I am just seeing lots of wonderful thank yous, saying that you had a very wonderful presentation, so I have to concur. So I guess I will start with a question for you, and that's, do you have any advice? Because you are a young birder yourself at only 17, and you got started at such a young age. So do
Mhm.
you have any advice for other young people who might be interested in starting to get to know birds and do more of that type of activity?
Well, honestly, the way I really started out in birding was just backyard birding, observing what came to my local backyard, as well as getting some field guides and just looking through them and studying as much as I could. And that really helped get me to actually start birding. Maybe a pair of binoculars as well, but just backyard birding is perfect. And eventually join an organization as well. Organizations like SFBBO and Los Angeles Birders, they really help get you along in your birding journey.
Yeah, definitely. So looking for some local organizations to get involved with. That's great advice, and I'm glad that you found us.
Oh
For
my.
those who don't know, Alex, in addition to volunteering to do this great presentation, he also helped with our lease turn monitoring program this summer. So hope you'll do that again.
I plan
Uh,
on it.
Great. All right, so I do see a question come in the chat. So uh, the question is, can you briefly address those initials or acronyms you used in your journal pages? So I think that's the 4-letter codes.
Oh, yeah. So the 4-letter codes are abbreviations for bird names, typically the first 2 letters of the bird name, or the first 4 letter if it's only singular. So like for black oyster catcher, I believe it would be BLOY, and that can really help abbreviate and save space in your journal. But there are exceptions. So like I believe Canada Goose is CANG, because then CAGO might conflict with cackling geese as well. And just as an ad note, these codes are used for bird banding as well.
Yeah, so if it's helpful for folks, I can find a document that has a list of all of those 4-letter codes and send that out in our follow-up email as well. We have another question that I'm seeing. Can you share about the first time you did an entry? What drew you to it?
The first time I did a journal entry, it was actually when I was very young, when I really just started out birding, and I was essentially just copying from a field guide that I had, but it really helped to actually get me to understand the process of journaling, because I did start labeling field marks and pointing to them with the arrows, and that honestly, that style is kind of still how I journal today. It was a very, for lack of a better term, a very primitive journal. I'll say that.
We all have to start somewhere. And a follow-up question related to that is, where did you learn basic journaling concepts? Did you ever attend some classes, other birders? Did you do something online?
Well, when I was really young and just started birding, I did attend a couple classes of drawing and field journaling, but a lot of it has actually been just journaling experimentation and finding what sticks, and just kind of going along and figuring out what I liked personally.
Yeah, and that's something that you've reiterated a lot, right? It's really for you, like whatever works for you. And I I definitely find that very accessible. People can do it in their own way and it can evolve over time.
Exactly. There's no set rules for field journaling.
Absolutely. All right, so let's see. So I think that is the last question for now, but if anybody has any additional questions, please go ahead and enter those. I'm happy to share those with Alex. I guess maybe of interest to the people who are also listening, Marty, in his introduction of you, mentioned that you are doing a study related to cardinals. And I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit about what that's about.
Sure. So I'm working with I'm working at the Moore Lab of Zoology in Southern California at Occidental College, and I'm looking at their specimens, trying to figure out the major morphological differences between the different subspecies of northern cardinal between the United States and Mexico. And I'm hoping to turn that into a full paper.
Really cool work. I love that you're also doing this science as well. And does that relate to any future career aspirations you may have?
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is kind of where my career will go, because I love birds, I love conservation, I love all aspects of birding. So I really just want to, I do think my end goal is to be an ornithologist.
Awesome. Well, I know that you have a very bright future ahead of you. I'm sure everybody in the audience can see that too, and we're excited for what the future brings with people like you in it. So thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for this wonderful talk. Do you have anything else that you want to say to the audience before we sign off?
Just, if anything, if you do decide to start field journaling, just have fun with it. That's the main thing. Just have fun and make it your own.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that message. And again, thanks so much for your wonderful presentation and sharing your awesome artwork. Again, just very inspiring for all kinds of people. So thank you also to everybody for attending. We really appreciate you being here and for listening to Alex. And we hope to see you again at a future event.
Yes, thank you all for attending. And thank you again for the opportunity to present here.